Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Football Palestine Extra, where we break down all the news that's happened this week in Palestinian football and give it to you in this nicely condensed video format. Now, um, full disclosure, I had hoped that by this time, I'm recording on Friday, uh, the 29th of August, uh, just a couple of days from the international break, the September international break starting. And I'd hoped that we would have a squad to discuss for the upcoming friendly against Malaysia. Unfortunately, that's not the case. That said, there's no shortage of things to discuss. So let's get right to it. And I had also promised you a couple of weeks ago that we try and get some interviews in with former national team players and some current national team players as well. Still trying to figure out the logistics on that. I know maybe a couple of them are watching these episodes. So hey, if I've spoken to you about this, let's make it happen. So, what can we discuss? I think the first thing we should do is maybe address a little bit this kind of press release that was put out. I mean, there was an entire press conference with the Palestinian Football Association president Jibril Rajoub. I won't get into the details too much about that. Just safe to say that he wanted to address um, all the crimes of the Israeli military against Palestinian football, and yeah, I think those are well documented. We know about that, but what I found very strange and what I think needs to kind of be called out is, they didn't call for Israel to be kicked out of FIFA and UEFA specifically, which I find a little bit strange. They went with a little bit more neutral language. They said hold Israel accountable, um, which I feel like is really really opaque language. Like, why wouldn't you just come out and say, actually, what we want is for Israel to get kicked out? Like, why are you not saying that explicitly? It is strange, not surprising, given the fact that we have to remember that Jibril was the man that 10 years ago had an opportunity, said he was going to do it, and he was going to take it to FIFA, and he did take it to FIFA, and it was going to go to a vote on whether or not Israel should get kicked out of football's governing body. And he pulled the motion at the last minute, at the 11th hour, and then shook the hand of his Israeli counterpart, which was very shocking. Nobody knew really what happened there. We don't know if he withdrew the motion because he didn't have the votes. If he didn't have the votes, really shame on him, because what were you doing in the 6 months or so leading up to that vote? Were you not lobbying to kind of get the votes of your counterparts all over the world? Um, and then I think the other part is, like, why would you withdraw a motion and not get anything in return for it, at least that we know of? So, ever since that happened, I've learned to take the words of the Palestine Football Association when it comes to this issue with a grain of salt, because there's a lot of action that could be taken. And I think a lot of non-Palestinian actors have taken more action and put more of, have put skin in the game. Anwar al-Ghazi, I think, is a great, 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 great example of that. That he said, this is the platform I have, I'm going to use it. He used it, he lost illegally his contract with Mainz. But, he spoke up when it was difficult for others to speak up. Fans all across the world, and for all tifos, sometimes they get heavy fans from the governing bodies, but they've spoken up. Okay, the Palestinian Football Association has spoken up, but I don't see them doing the work to get Israel suspended. And I think there is so much that can be done that really hasn't been explored. And that's really because, again, it kind of all comes back to this when we talk about Palestinian football in general. It's, the people in charge don't really have an interest in the sport, don't know what they're doing, and don't really care, to be honest with you. The Palestine Football Association is basically Jibril Rajoub's fiefdom, and his designs were to, and still are, I think, are to succeed Abu Mazen once he kicks the bucket. So, we're stuck in this situation now where I think if there was a lobbying effort, let's say, towards the players, towards the captains, let's say, of each national team that's in the same group in qualifying with Israel, you might be able to get them to take some sort of action. Instead, they kind of just sit there, and then Norway does something by their own volition, which is to donate the ticket proceeds to Gaza relief, and then they thank them. And it's like, okay, great, but that doesn't really move the needle. It doesn't do anything. And it should be your responsibility actually to be guiding this effort, and they aren't doing that. You might ask me, well, what can they do? I would say this. I would go to the captains of Estonia, of Moldova, of Norway, of Italy, and say, hey, consider emulating the example of Robert Lewandowski, of Thomas Tuchel, and of what's the name of that guy who used to play for Red Bull Leipzig? His name escapes me, but the Sweden captain as well, and follow their examples. And heck, if you're so connected, the captain of Estonia and the captain of Moldova, they might say, well, that's really going to threaten my position, might threaten my livelihood. Why don't you just get on the phone with, you should have friends in this business. You've been at the helm of Palestinian football since 2008. Get on the phone with the Qataris or with whomever and say, hey, can you offer the captain of Moldova a contract, the captain of Estonia a contract, which would pay them a lot more than they're getting paid now as a reward for taking this? And, you have to start thinking outside the box. You have to play even a little bit dirty, I would say, because the opposition is playing dirty. And if you aren't willing to capture the moment, and I do think there is a moment right now that is saying, obviously we are against killing children, and we're against ethnic cleansing, and we're against genocide. That is not an extreme position in Europe. Even in North America, you could argue it's not an extreme position. So societally, people have shifted. Their opinions have changed massively over the past 2 years. And yeah, I think if you ask the average person, are you for this? They might say, yeah, I'm for this. I'm actually, I don't want to see Israel compete in sport. So, but you have to take advantage of the moment, and you have to actually do something when the momentum is in your favor to, seize your opportunity. And I don't think the Palestine Football Association is going to do that. And I think it's asking a lot, right? It's asking a lot of a stranger. Let's put it that way, right? We're not talking about nations that we are culturally linked with. We're talking about strangers to go and put their own livelihood on the line. And I think probably what tipped things in the favor of Ukraine with Russia getting suspended was the fact that you had Poland in the group, and Poland and Ukraine share this bond and kind of share a common enemy in Russia. You have the Czechs as well, who have a history with Russia, so that helped them that they were in a group with people who had a shared experience and who are very similar culturally. So was there good fortune? And I always say this. It's not like Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022. Russia invaded Ukraine in 2014, and that was met with a lot of indifference. It just, 2022 was different than 2014 because everything was framed differently. And so there was societal permission to take these actions against Russia because, the political powers that be were also kind of gearing up to take actions of their own against Russia. Now, the political powers that be do not want to take action against Israel. But I'll tell you what, right now they don't want to be associated with what's happening. So I think this is all food for thought. And so when you hear about Israel getting suspended, about Israel's continued participation, whether it's in Eurobasket, whether it's in the upcoming FIFA World Cup qualifiers, just keep that in mind. I think it's really good perspective and context to have. So we'll fold the page on that, but I thought it was interesting that that happened this week, and I thought, if you had read that or seen that, it would be good for you guys to have that context. Moving on,